I think regardless of the percentage of workforce or the amount of people or exit interviews or whatever that looks like, I think you really have to think about your talent pipeline and who are your strong performers and what are you going to do to retain them. I want to call out one thing. I don't think all attrition is bad or negative. I think it can give you an opportunity to think about how is that particular team or department structured today and what do we need to do to make it more successful tomorrow. I think we have employees in 30 or 31 states as of today. So we're everywhere for a small company, right?
That's not a small company anymore.
Right? It's not fair to drag them out. It's not fair to have a 5, 6, 7 interview cycle process. I really encourage our hiring managers to keep it less than 3 and just really don't waste candidates' time. If they're applying to multiple jobs, you never know, they might have other offers in the pipeline, and it's not fair for them to miss those opportunities because you're dragging your feet and taking too long.
Welcome everybody. This is Arun Satyan from Hyreo, back in our next edition of Hyreo Rise, which talks a lot about, talent acquisition, HR. We've got a whole set of experts that we covered in our previous episodes. Today, it's going to be slightly different. It's going to be slightly interesting because we've got a very focused healthcare, discussion today. We've got a wonderful guest today, Celika. She comes with over a decade of experience in talent, HR, building teams, healthcare, and different aspects, a little bit of finance as well. A very, very warm welcome, Celika, to today's edition of podcast at Hyreo Rise series. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I hope I got your introduction right. Anything else that you would like to add to that?
Nope, that was perfect.
Thank you so much on a Monday morning joining us here, Celika. So as I was mentioning, guys, today we're going to talk a little bit of healthcare, talent in healthcare. And I'm going to start it off, Celika, with a very, very simple question that most of us kind of hear it every day. And we've heard different perspectives from different leaders who comes from that space as well. Let's find out some of those challenges. Now, you've been recruiting, you've been building teams, you know how this domain works, and it's a very, very complex industry, as we all know. So what are some of those key challenges, let's say top 3 to 5 challenges that you would call out for healthcare today?
For healthcare today, I'm primarily in the technology space. So in past lives, I did recruit for the specialty positions or licensed healthcare providers. That's been about 8 years ago. So I think primarily for the healthcare tech space, we have a unique position for the company that I'm with. We are fully remote. So there are pros and cons that come with that. When it comes to the challenges we face, I think we are moving at such a quick pace as a company in general. It's hard to fill those roles and make sure that we make the right decision and we bring in the best candidate for that role each time. Another challenge that I think we have is we don't do the pay changes based on your geographic area. And so we might have a candidate from rural Arkansas versus a candidate in the Bay Area, and they're equal, but the pay range is going to be the same regardless of where they are. For my experience right now, that hasn't posed any challenges, but I've heard from some of my peers in the industry that can be a bottleneck at times. So I think that's definitely something everyone should be aware of as we're thinking about the future and moving forward. The third and final challenge, I think, is we are a small company in a big space, but it's really not that big of a space. Everybody knows everybody. And so there's constantly the referrals and the, so-and-so's friend, or, I've worked with this person in the past and they're great. And so how do you balance the personal referrals with the hundreds, if not thousands of applicants that we're getting on a day-to-day basis for the small amount of roles that we have open? So my guidance to my team, I try to stay a little bit away from recruiting when I can and let them take over. My guidance to them is always treat everyone fairly and equally, follow the process to a T. And at the end, we'll be able to identify the right candidate in the right way for the right reason.
Got it. And when you mentioned about healthcare tech, right? That's a very, very competitive space. And as you rightly said, everybody knows everybody, right? And although we say that it's kind of wide, it's still kind of narrowed in some forms of shape, right? Now, one of the things that I was in a recent conversation with somebody from healthcare tech, and one of the things that he mentioned was about, the attrition or employee turnover that they're seeing, and because obviously the industry is showing resilience, it's growing, and there is a lot of demand for folks who understand the space. Across the board, they see a lot of attrition-related problems. Big and small organizations are going through that. What's your take on that? How do you see this kind of evolving in the years to come? And what's your perspective on that?
I think it's going to vary based on the size of the company. That's just my opinion. For the company that I'm currently with, we're fairly small. We're around 120 full-time employees. We don't have a large number of attrition or turnover right now. It does feel like it comes in waves. And I feel that because we're a smaller organization, if we lose one strong performer, it's going to make a large impact. And so it's going to seem much more than one person. I recently had someone approach me in a conversation at work, and they said, why are we losing so many people? And I thought to myself, I've only had 2 exit interviews in the last 2 months. What do you mean so many people, right? To me, being in larger companies over time, 2 people does not ring a bell as a lot of people and leaving the organization or turnover, attrition. But then when you think deeper into it, these 2 folks that they were talking about, one went a totally different career path, and I respect their decision and wish them well. And the other took a promotion with a different company, which again, respect their decision and truly hope they do well. But when you think about all the things they were working on and how many different departments they were impacting on a day-to-day basis, it can seem like a lot of attrition. So I think regardless of the percentage of workforce or the amount of people or exit interviews or whatever that looks like, I think you really have to think about your talent pipeline and who are your strong performers and what are you going to do to retain them. So we're starting to implement performance reviews and the 9-box talent review so that we can have some sort of a plan to say, okay, if this person is really doing well and they should be promoted into the next level to keep them here, how can we do that? Do we have budget? What other projects would we need them to take on, if any? So we're really starting to have those conversations with our executive leadership team and also all of our people leaders. I think it's important that they're aware of who's their stronger performer and, how do we bring up those around them? How can we use that strong performer as an influence to bring everyone else around them up?
Right. So if I hear you correctly, and I think you might be representing a lot of startups as well, or early stage companies which are in that phase of growth where every individual in the team, no matter what department you are super crucial for the growth or scaling up of the organization from where you stand today. And I think it's a very valid point also that you mentioned about how do you build that ecosystem of nurturing them, creating that relationship, having the top performers really work with the rest of the team to kind of scale them up, grow them up, a culture of actually, holding them together. And I think that's wonderful. And I think that's a model that a lot of companies in the stage that you spoke about should ideally be focusing on. And good that we spoke about it. Gives me a segue into a related question that I had, and especially in this area where, how do you create a talent pipeline, especially when you are young and small, when you're not a very, very large brand, but you're still working for something which is very, very exciting? How do you create? What are the things that you keep in mind as a young leader who essentially look for top talent and who want to make sure that the pipeline is solid enough in terms of the kind of incoming talent as well? So any strategies that you personally look at, advise your team on, something that you want to comment on?
Absolutely. So I think that's a really good question. And I think it definitely is a nice segue from the last question. I want to call out one thing. I don't think all attrition is bad or negative. I think it can give you an opportunity to think about how is that particular team or department structured today, and what do we need to do to make it more successful tomorrow? So to answer your question about the pipeline, there's a couple of different things that we're doing at my current employer, and we are looking at what are our benefit offerings. So we are remote, so that does give everyone a different, unique take on the work. We're all across the United States, so we're in every time zone. I think we have employees in 30 or 31 states as of today. So we're everywhere for a small company, right? We
That's not a small company anymore.
right. A lot of things to keep up with in the HR world as far as employment law and things like that when you're in that many states. I will say from a pipeline perspective, thinking about benefits, aside from just being remote, we do offer a very robust medical coverage package. We do 401ks. We match up to 5% for those that do contribute to their 401k here. We have other benefits. We've rolled out a new recognition program, and volunteer paid time off is coming soon. We've got a lot of things in the pipeline coming from the HR side of the house to try to retain that talent and really ensure that we're giving everyone a great employee experience. So first and foremost, from the pipeline perspective, I want everyone to have a great experience from the minute that they submit their application to their last day before retirement. That would be the ideal life cycle, right? I want everyone to have a great time. I want them to have the support they need and enjoy the work that they do. Not every day is going to be perfect. We know that. That's not reality. But we want to offer them what we can. So that would be something I really focus on. And additionally, I encourage hiring managers when they're interviewing for certain roles. If you have 2 or 3 candidates that you're just really struggling to choose from, let's talk to them. Let's talk about what does our future look like? Right now we might not have budget to be able to hire for both or all 3. So how do we stay in contact with the people that we really think could add value in the future? And let's maintain that relationship, because eventually we'll have a spot and let's bring them into it. I'm dealing with that right now. I had a position that didn't work out, and the person that was our second top candidate was still available, and now they're starting with us in a couple weeks. So it's really been a good way to just make sure that the recruiting life cycle doesn't take too long, and that we're still getting people in. And it's nice to see so far, each time we've done that, everyone that we've wanted is still available and able to come work, and they're still eager to work here. And so I think our reputation is starting to precede us, which is great.
Great points, Celika, there. So I heard a mix of things. I heard relationship, staying in touch with them, tagging them for future opportunities, maybe. That again leads me to something that we've been talking about, at least of late, a lot, which is about candidate experience. Keeping the process short. One of the things that you mentioned. But if I was to double click on that and kind of hear your views on what are the things that you're kind of experimenting in terms of candidate experience prior to they actually getting onboarded. So when they're part of the pipeline, when they're not in the active, but somewhere in the passive pipeline, and you're trying to kind of stay in touch with them, anything that you feel would benefit the audience in terms of, candidate experience in this context.
Certainly. I think it's very important to follow up and be transparent with candidates. You never know what they're experiencing. Have they been laid off? Do they have a family situation that took them out of the workforce for a while? Or are they just searching for something new and better? So it depends. And we need to be mindful and respectful of what each candidate may or may not be going through in their personal lives. And I think we have a lot of applicants for each of our roles, and I assume that most companies are in the same scenario. So just really being mindful of that. It's not fair to drag them out. It's not fair to have a 5, 6, 7 interview cycle process. I really encourage our hiring managers to keep it less than 3. So we'll do our recruiter, we'll do a 15-minute or less phone screen, then we'll do 1 30-minute interview with the hiring manager, and then we usually do 1 small panel with whoever they would work with the most. And then that's it. I don't really advocate for more. Occasionally we'll have an assignment if it's a high level role. If we have a VP of technology or something to that nature, we're going to ask, do you have experience in these specific areas, and can you show us how you would work through this problem? Again, I don't expect it to be hours and hours of their time, but just want to make sure that we are picking the right person to lead that team and get that work done. So occasionally there might be an assignment, but really keeping it short, keeping it brief. Do the research. I'm encouraging managers and recruiters, do the research. Look at the LinkedIn, look at their resume, make sure things match. And just really don't waste candidates' time. If they're applying to multiple jobs, you never know, they might have other offers in the pipeline, and it's not fair for them to miss those opportunities because you're dragging your feet and taking too long. So just be mindful of what they're going through and be respectful of their time.
Awesome. And how much of this do you get support from the business, the executive team in terms of implementing some of these candidate-focused programs, right? Be it quicker resolution, turnaround time, making it simple and transparent. So how much of it really is understood by hiring managers, and your take on how this really works on the ground, not from the HR side, but from the other side of the table, right?
That's a good question. I would say we have a lot of support from our leadership team here. We have struggled in the past. I think before I joined, there was not a lot of structure or process around recruiting in particular. So we've really implemented some parameters to help this move forward quicker and better and more effective for the candidate. I think one of the things we do is we'll keep them posted each week. We let them know if we're looking at their resume or not, are you going to be selected? And then at the end of the process, when we have selected the final candidate to extend an offer, I make sure that my team sends, the notice to every applicant, regardless if it was today they applied or a month ago that they applied. That way that they can have that closure. I think from our leadership team, I do struggle. There's a few hiring managers out there that have not been able to prioritize interviewing, and we have to push them out. And then all of a sudden we're losing candidates because we didn't get a response for 2 weeks from the hiring manager. So now it's back to stage one. Here's another pile of resumes. Let us know. And so at that point, it gets a little frustrating just because I don't feel like my team is able to deliver the best experience for the candidates. And then when it happens again, the hiring manager gets frustrated with us, but our hands are kind of tied.
Totally understandable. And I think one of the key challenges that I feel and somebody who's worked on this space as a technology platform, especially in candidate experience, one of the kind of teething issues is how do you make sure that this handshake really works? On one side, recruiting teams are making sure that the brand story is out properly, candidates are kept warm, they know what's happening. We try our best to kind of make sure that story is alive on one side, but end of the day, the decision is obviously going to be dependent on whether they are selected in a certain round of interview or not. But I think we still have a long way to go, I think, as an industry to kind of pick that up and then make that as mainstream. But I think good that a lot of organizations of all sizes are now focused on improving that. And tech can be a great savior there, right? I mean, it can really do a lot of difference for recruiting teams as well as, the hiring managers, both in a sense, right? Well, as we get closer to our closing, and as we have limited time on this, but I want to open this up to you, Celika, on any one or two experiences that you feel from your experience as a HR person, as a team builder, as a communicator, as a leadership person, that you would share that some of our audience could take back to work tomorrow morning, or rather today morning.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I think I can pull from a large variety of different experiences, particularly in the recruiting space. I think it's going to be critical that there's an organized process put in place to be able to ensure that a hiring manager has very clear expectations of what is and is not their responsibility throughout the process. They should also understand when the recruiter or the HR team member is going to be following up with them, so they're not left wondering. And in turn, that will make the candidate experience much more smooth for them and enjoyable, regardless if they get the role or not. I think it's also very important before a company posts a role, make sure that it's budgeted, make sure that it's all right to do, make sure that it's supported by the enterprise. One of the worst things that can happen is you hire because you're scaling and you bring all these people in, and then you have to turn around and do a reduction in force because the hiring wasn't aligned with the finance team. So I would strongly encourage people to think twice about it before posting a role. Make sure that you have the hiring committee. If you don't have one now, create one. Get the buy-in from your executive leadership team and truly make sure there's a business case for each role. I think sometimes leaders get very overwhelmed in the day-to-day and there's so many things going on. They automatically think they need more people when in reality, maybe it's a process improvement or an automation that's available. Why don't you make time and carve out resources to handle that? It's much better to do that in 2 weeks than hire someone and have to let them go 6 months later. So really just understanding the need for each position, communicating well and being prepared. I think that makes it a better experience all the way around for everyone involved.
Lovely, Celika. I think quite a lot of interesting points that came up in terms of healthcare tech hiring, both in terms of managing expectations, keeping that, line active with candidates, making sure that you're communicating as transparently, getting the business aligned to hiring, making sure that we don't make mistakes in terms of not sizing the whole, team really well, and then having to sort of get into trouble later, maybe 6 months later. But thank you so much, Celika, for your time today. It was a great start to a Monday morning. And thank you so much for some of those words of wisdom, experience that you had from your past days. Lovely connecting with you, Celika, and we look forward to more from you in the coming days. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.